All right, so we've seen what happens when solids, when ionic solids to be exact, when ionic solids meet up with water. For most ionic solids, they do dissolve. What about gases? How does oxygen solubility differ from ionic solids? At 24 degrees, you can get 37 grams of sodium chloride dissolved. 37 grams. But only 9 milligrams of oxygen. Only 9. Why is oxygen solubility so important to life? Well, most plants and animals breathe in oxygen. Most plants and animals, keep in mind that plants only breathe out carbon dioxide, or I'm sorry, breathe out oxygen when they're undergoing photosynthesis. Normally, when they're growing, just like us, they will breathe in oxygen. Okay? As the water gets warmer, you will have less oxygen in the water. That could very well have caused a fish kill. Actually, most fish kills are caused by 5 or 6 days of really hot weather. The water gets warm, you have less oxygen. Look at this. So as temperature increases, what happens to the solubility of oxygen? It's not just oxygen, it's all gases. It goes down. The line goes down. Yes, you are. So how do gases behave in water as the water temperature increases? Number 28, they become less and less soluble. There's less of them. Less and less soluble. Water, when it's really cold, right at the edge of beginning to freeze, can absorb 2 times more oxygen than warmer water, which is around 25 degrees. Water temperature in the 70s. Okay? So the warmer the water gets, the less oxygen you're going to find. Here's a good example. You can't hear the audio, but that's okay. They're going to have 3 Coke cans, or Crush. You're right, Crush, whatever Crush is. And what they're going to do is they're going to place the test tubes containing the exact same amount of Crush in a cold, that's cold, and that's hot, and that's room temperature. Cold, hot, cold, hot, and room temperature. Look what you're seeing there.
Bubbles.
Yep. Where are the bubbles coming from? The carbonation. The carbon dioxide. There's carbon dioxide dissolved in Crush. In all Coke products, you have carbon dioxide dissolved. So as the Coke product gets warmer, the carbon dioxide does not want to be there anymore. So it comes out. So you can see it beginning to accumulate down here in the bottom. Okay? After a while, who do you expect to have the greatest amount of carbon dioxide out? Look at that.
Wow.
Look at that. After a while, that's how much carbon dioxide has come out of the Coke, and the Coke has been pushed out. Crush. And then in room temperature water, that is how much, and in cold water, that is how much. Okay? That is why you just let Coke sit there opened. Within a few hours, it's not going to feel as refreshing because it's gone what you call flat. And all that means is that carbon dioxide, which does nothing for the taste, by the way. Carbon dioxide does absolutely nothing for the taste. It just makes you feel, makes your mouth cooler, because as these guys get on in your mouth, it uses the warmth from your mouth to become a gas again. So all that Coke does is it robs your mouth and your throat of energy, and you feel it as refreshing. Okay? Why is it foolish to go fishing in the heat of the day?
The fishies are at the bottom.
The fishies are at the bottom where it's cooler in order to allow them to be able to breathe. That's right. Okay, the cooler the water, the more oxygen you're going to have. You understand? The warmer the water, the less oxygen you're going to have. So the fish, during the heat of the day, the fish go deeper into the cooler water in order to get more oxygen. They'll be not moving around much. Remember that fish are ectotherms. That means their metabolism is based on the temperature of their environment. So the warmer it is, the more active they want to get. But the more active they want to get, the more oxygen they need, so they can actually exercise themselves to death in warm water. So when the water is warm, they drift underneath trees. Ever gone fishing for them during the heat of the day? Where will you find them? Look, you'll find them deep, and you'll find them under the shade, where it's cooler, where there's more oxygen. How is gas solubility affected by air pressure? Well, let's think about Coke cans, right? The carbon dioxide needs to be in the water in order for, when you take a drink, for you to feel that refreshing feeling. So what do? What does the Coca-Cola bottling company in Atlanta do? It pumps air, pumps carbon dioxide above the liquid in order to force some of the CO2 into the drink. So the greater the air pressure, the more gas can be dissolved. Why is this concept so important to us? You don't have to write this down. I mean, it's CO2. It's what I just said. In order for your Coke not to be flat, what do they have to pump into the Coke can? They had to put it under pressure. They had to shove a lot of air in there. They had to shove, more specifically, carbon dioxide in there in order to make the carbon dioxide dissolve in the water. Carbon dioxide does not like to dissolve in water that much. So we have to force them to dissolve by pumping that Coke full of carbon dioxide. The greater the pressure above it, the more it can dissolve. It's called Henry's Law.
The solubility of a gas in any solvent is proportional to the pressure of the gas over the liquid. Here we see a gas in equilibrium between the liquid and gas phases. When the gas is compressed, the solubility of the gas in the liquid phase increases in proportion to the increased pressure. The relationship between gas pressure and solubility is known as Henry's Law.
So how do water animals breathe? Through gills. Yeah. They literally extract tiny little air bubbles, tiny little oxygen bubbles from the water. What are the three ways in which oxygen bubbles dissolve in water? Number one, dissolves directly from the air above the water. Number two, aeration, when water plunges over a dam or flows across the boulders in streams forming a froth. And number three, some plants and animals produce oxygen through photosynthesis. Different kinds of fish require different levels of oxygen in the water. One of the yummiest fish of all is what kind of freshwater fish? Well, that's not freshwater, my friend.
I hate fish. Fish is not
Trout. Exactly, trout. Where is the only place you can find trout? What? I don't like that. And what kind of rivers?
Fresh water.
Cold water rivers, mountain streams. What does it tell you about the oxygen requirements of trout? Very high. Trout require a lot of oxygen. So typically the only place you can find trout is in mountain rivers.
What's a froth?
Frothy water is water that contains a lot of bubbles.
Did you say what's a froth? I said, what is a froth? I want to start thinking.
Okay, so in the last 100 years, though, we have been able to find trout in the valley rivers, but only in one specific spot, under the dams, right up against the dam, on the other side of a dam. Why?
Cold.
What? Why would there be a lot of oxygen there? Yeah, those of you who've seen a dam working, you know that it allows water to come through, cascading through. So as it cascades through, it captures a lot of air. So there's a lot of froth there at the bottom. And what that means is there's a lot of captured oxygen, enough for trout to be able to live there. Now, how they got there, probably fishermen stocked it right underneath once they discovered that trout could live there. So fishermen put the trout there. The trout can't get too far away from the dam because it'll begin to suffocate.
Oh.
Okay, there's another place for those of you who's ever gone camping, who went camping a lot. Did you ever go camping in a campground with a trout pond?
Yes.
Okay, what's in the middle of the trout pond? It has to be in the middle of a trout pond. What's in the middle of a trout pond?
Lily pot.
No.
There was some of that.
No, there has to be a fountain. You know what I'm talking about? Water shooting up in the sky?
Oh, yeah.
It has to be. Because in order for the trout to live there, you have to fill that water with a lot of air.
Do they live near waterfalls then?
Under waterfalls?
In many fish, the breathing process begins when the gill covers close and the mouth opens. The walls of the mouth then move inward. The mouth partially closes and the gill covers open. This action forces the water from the mouth into the gill chambers. The inside of each gill consists of fleshy, thread-like filaments. Water from the mouth passes over the filaments. The filaments are closely spaced along a gill arch in 2 rows. Each filament has many tiny extensions called lamellae. Blood flowing through the lamella takes oxygen from the water and releases carbon dioxide into the water. After the fish receives its oxygen, the water passes out through the gill openings and the breathing process begins again.
Besides animals, what other forms of life use oxygen? Bacteria. They're called aerobic bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria do not use oxygen. Aerobic bacteria do use oxygen. They are necessary in the ecosystem because what they do is they will break down, using oxygen, they'll break down waste. Okay, they are the little sewer guys. They will break down the waste, break it down into particles that can be reconsumed by animal life and by plant life. Okay? So the problem is, though, if we dump enough waste into the water, then the bacteria numbers go up as they are trying to consume the waste. But as these bacteria grow in their population, what happens to the amount of oxygen in the water?
It goes down.
It goes down. What danger do aerobic bacteria pose to life? I just explained that. If you have a lot of this biodegradable waste, the oxygen levels goes down because the bacteria numbers go up. So what happens to the rate or speed of many chemical reactions? And this is one of the most important principles in chemistry. With every 10 degrees, you double in chemistry what normally happens, the rate at which it happens. So the hotter things get, the more things will happen. So the warmer the water, the more bacteria is doing its job, therefore less oxygen. What could have caused this fish kill that we've been talking about for the past 5 weeks? It could have been caused by bacteria. There being too much bacteria, which means it reduced the amount of oxygen. What does it mean when we say the fish are cold-blooded? We talked about this. Their body temperatures will match the temperature of the water. What happens to fish when water temperature increases? They get more active, right? But what happens to a fish if they're more active? They require more oxygen. I'm sorry, what happens to a fish when the water temperature decreases? They get sluggish. So what happens when they get more active? They need more oxygen. they'll eat more, they'll consume more oxygen, and if the water temperature is warm already, you have a lot of fish, and they need a lot of oxygen. There's not a lot of oxygen, so normally the competition is very severe and fish will die. How do manufacturing and power plants disturb the delicate balance? A good nuclear reactor will not in any way pollute the water. Not even a tiny little particle of radioactive materials goes into the water. Unfortunately, the water that they release may be a couple of degrees warmer than the water they got. In other words, they will not pollute the water with things, but they may make the water warmer, and by making it warmer, you reduce the amount of oxygen. Here's some different fish. Fish can survive at a maximum of 15 degrees. Trout can survive at 15 degrees or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Perch, 24, 75. Carp. Ugh. Those are those really they're really nasty fish, but they require, carp and catfish require very little oxygen.
I got bit by a catfish one time.
You like catfish? I don't. I guess it's the way you prepare it. But here's something else that's very interesting. Basically, the whiter the meat in fish, the less oxygen it requires. Not only fish, but also in chicken. The darker the meat, the more oxygen it requires. And think about chicken. Chicken legs is? Legs. Do they require a lot of oxygen?
Yeah, because they move a lot.
They move around a lot, right? Okay, so it's dark. The breast, does the musculature in the breast require a lot of oxygen?
Yeah, 'cause you gotta be pumping your heart all the time.
No, not the muscles outside. Okay, so as you can imagine, the breasts are white meat because it's a muscle that does not move around a lot, does not require a lot of oxygen. Probably, yeah.
I don't like turkey.
So the same thing. Why is catfish very, very white meat? Because the muscles do not require as much oxygen. Why are fish like salmon and trout colored darker? Because it's a type of fish that requires a lot of oxygen.
Oh, salmon, I want to go up the stream.
Yep.